Yeah, I'm Deborah. As you've already met me, unfortunately, welcome to these sessions on academic writing. And it's my pleasure today to introduce Cindy Wee and Ruth Laing, who are both learning advisors, as are we all. And they're at Unitec, so they support students across all ranges. They came from English language lecturing backgrounds, working with students for whom English was not their first language. And what they are going to share with us today in this first session is very much aligned with our conference theme, the idea of approaching academic writers holistically. So strategies of empathy, relationship building, reflection, questioning, and being flexible. So they're going to share with us very much their experience of working with a variety of students based on case studies. So Ruth and Cindy, welcome very much. We look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you. We're going to share the screen.
Just to mention while we're waiting that the presentation ideally is 15 minutes and there will be space at the end for questions. But put them in the chat if you've got them and we'll keep them on. Thank you.
So kia ora and good morning, everyone. I'm Cindy Wee from Unitec. I've been a learning advisor for the past 15 years, and I work with students on a one-on-one. There's one part of my role in terms of academic writing. And I also have a background in teaching English as an additional language.
I have a similar background to, my name's Ruth Laing, and I'm also a learning advisor, and I have a similar background to Cindy, but I've only been working in this area for the past 6 years. I'm particularly interested in students with learning disabilities. I've done a spelled qualification recently, and I'm now undertaking postgrad studies in disability. So that's me.
Yeah, so today we are very pleased to share some of our practices regarding holistic approach when we take to support our students on a one-on-one. And I believe we all do too. And we believe that every student is unique and comes from a diverse background, and each has different learning needs and may have multiple issues. As learning advisors, when a student seeks help in their academic writing, we approach each student holistically. And we believe also that educating the whole person requires understanding the individuals and treating each student as a unique individual. We have some approaches, some strategies rather, to share with you how we approach holistic support to students doing the academic writing. So the first one that we do is to establish or develop positive relationship with our students. So in that, we believe, and also according to research, says that successful, positive, and caring relationships transpire when students feel that their academic advisor genuinely cares for them and for their success.
Yeah. So students come to see us, they're often very vulnerable because sharing the fact that they don't know how to do something can be quite difficult for many students. For example, I had a student with dyslexia who walked into my room and goes, "I am dumb." And I said, "Oh, why do you say that?" And they said, "Because I've got dyslexia." So how we deal with that is we talk to them for a while around the subject and find out why they're feeling the way they are, and maybe even share something of our story as well that's relevant to what they're talking about. We adjust our approach according to each student that comes to us, and we help with their confidence and build on what they already know, find out what they already know. And over to you.
So one of the strategies that we have when we work with students on a one-on-one is to show empathy. So we need to have patience and also active listening skills to help better understand what's driving students' needs, and also finding strategies to help work through difficult moments together. So, for example, I had one student who saw me during one of my drop-in sessions, and she wanted to see me in a quiet quieter and private space. And as soon as we got there, she started crying. She was crying very badly, and I was also feeling a bit, uneasy. However, I gave her a hug and asked her, and also console her and also comforted her, asking her how and why she was feeling in that way. And what happened was actually she told me that, she has received a very mean letter from a lecturer saying that she shouldn't be asking questions of how to write her assessment because she is already in her final year. And also she was lecturer also asked whether she is dyslexic for not being able to comprehend the things that she was learning. So she was very, very upset. And so what I did was, so can you imagine how her feelings was at that time? So I tried to I told her that I do understand how you feel. And, so let's focus on what needs to be done. And so I redirected her attention to looking at her assessment and giving her, the assurance that I will work through the assessment with her by helping her to unpack the difficult questions that she needed to do, and also coming up with a structure to help her to, to start her writing, and also to guide her into the research that she needed to do. And also giving her the assurance that I will look at the first draft if she has finished. And yes, she did. And she came back, and I gave her, further feedback for her to improve. And as a result, she came back later on to, tell me that she actually achieved 84 marks for that assessment. So that actually was very pleasing to know, and also giving her, she felt understood and supported was actually one way that she actually has helped her to stay motivated and increase her awareness, and also encourage her to advocate for herself that she is actually can do it, not because of what the lecturers have said.
I have an additional example to show you. Where I had a student who was with the learning difficulties, who was reluctant to write because his fine motor skills weren't that great and he didn't want to write anything. So what I did is we had to listen to a video, and I got him to tell me what notes he wanted me to write, and I wrote them down for word, handwrote them. And then he took the handwritten notes and converted them into an essay on his computer. And it was really good for him because he actually changed a lot of it to make a good essay, and he's done really, really well. So, yeah. The other thing we are, and Cindy's just alluded to this in her previous thing, about how we allow multiple appointments when necessary to meet students' needs. Some of our learners have had like 30 or 40 years away from study, and they come back and they haven't used a computer before, and they haven't written an essay even when they were at school. And so sometimes it takes more than one appointment to get them comfortable in the environment so that they can actually learn and make progress. And it's amazing how, offering a bit of extra help, being flexible, allows them to fly, basically. And there's also we have an awareness that sometimes students are on practicum and can't make regular 9 to 5 times, so we will offer times outside of those hours if it's necessary.
Yeah, and sometimes when students may have some medical condition, like what I have a student with multiple issues, as well as medically she was not well. She often have fainting spells, so she was unable to meet me, on the scheduled appointments. So what I did was I had to schedule her appointments based on the time when she is actually fit to meet me and to work right on her assessment. And as a result of that, she actually was very grateful for the time that I was being able to provide the flexibility to help her. And also it shows that, we care for her well-being as well. So it's quite interesting to know that, even though these are the little things that we can offer to a student, it makes a lot of difference to them. Okay, another aspect of what we do is actually quite Ruth and I, we always meet students on a one-on-one, especially students writing, from the English language students. We often try to understand their cultural and learning differences when they, approach us in their writing task. And we believe very strongly that, we need to understand the cultural differences they come from and also the different learning styles that they have. Because if they are from a different culture of learning, it can be very difficult, and it is reflected in the way that they write. So what we do is we try to understand that, for example, the Asian culture, students would be writing their, their essays, or, they're writing in a very inward turning spiral, which is inductive, direct, and also circular approach to the topic, comparing to the Western way of writing, which can be very, very linear and also direct to the topic. So having that understanding can actually help them to unpack those difficult challenges that they may have. And also, according to the threshold concept, in the area of academic writing, there may be some troublesome knowledge in terms of the students from the Asian background, in terms of referencing, for example, in terms of writing critically, analytically, and also some of the conventions that they may not be familiar with. So helping them to undergo, to see it in a different perspective, and actually guiding them, and also helping them to transform the way of thinking that they had before, can actually help them to progress in the way of writing. So they will be able to understand and know how to write in the Western way of conventions. So yeah.
So not only Asian students, but other students from other cultures also struggle with our Western way of doing things. For example, I had a Brazilian student who spoke Portuguese as their first language, and the lecturer actually referred her to a learning advisor, and she got me as her learning advisor. And the problem was that she was writing from the specific detail to the more general detail, and we obviously write the other way around. And I showed her, and we talked about how it worked in Brazil. She was able to change the way that she wrote to fit in with what the Western culture was asking for. Further example is an Egyptian student who came to me and said, I'm really confused because I asked my lecturer some questions and they just threw it open about how to write, and they just threw it open to the rest of the class. They went, well, how do you write an introduction? And they drew these examples from the rest of the class. He said he didn't understand that way of working, because when in Egypt, they actually give the students everything. Like, they don't ask the other students to contribute. And so he was really confused. And I took him through how to write an essay, and now he's doing really well.
So we would, both Ruth and I, we actually, try to use explicit teaching of the writing. For example, we may be actually teaching students how to write, an introduction, literally, how does it work? What are the sentences you need to, to structure on, and also writing a perfect paragraph, starting from a topic sentence, and step by step guiding them. And also, I believe Ruth also has, has ways of how she, the students.
I've even taught the basics of we often teach how to actually write a sentence and what a sentence should have in it and what it would look like. Because I had one student who didn't actually realise that she wasn't writing sentences, because in her job, she was only ever required to write notes, and she thought the notes were sentences, and she wondered why she was always getting it back from lecturers going, this is not a sentence. And there's another example where we teach about plagiarism, and you can put it through Turnitin and check your work. And this poor student put her work through Turnitin and saw quite a high percentage of it was apparently plagiarised, but she'd actually decided that her reference list, because it came up as, similar, and she spent all weekend trying to get rid of her reference list because she thought that. So it's a good example of how explicit sometimes you actually need to be with students. The other thing about with students. Often students can't see how well they're actually doing, and it's really, in our practice, we tend to point it out with positive feedback, because even the students that are struggling, there is definitely things that they do well, and you want them to keep them, and you want them to keep motivated, so it helps build confidence in better writing if they know they've done some things well. And we're always authentic and honest. We, don't lie to students, and, because if we're authentic, then they believe us, and then they go, oh, actually, I was quite good at that. And that makes a big difference. And then so it has a positive impact on their confidence and helps them keep on doing their written assignments. And then they often receive higher grades as well.
All right. There's another strategy that we often use, when we support students on a one-on-one, especially for students who haven't been back to study for a while, and they have to, apply those critical thinking skills. So, for example, I have a student who just came back to study a master's in a business course. She was literally, feeling very frustrated that she doesn't know how to demonstrate her writing in a critical analysis way as expected of a lecturer in the first assignment. So having, that kind of position that she was at, it was quite difficult for her to really understand how she could be, writing it in a, in that manner. So I tried to use the high order questioning technique to guide her, to help her to look at the case studies and also to be able to apply what she has found in the case study into her writing. So as a result of that, after a few appointments, she was able to, integrate what she has learned into the piece of writing that she had to do. And she came back and told me that she got an A for that first assessment. So that actually builds her confidence to further want to continue the course. Otherwise, she was thinking she might not be, able to do that course.
And
so questioning actually, using high-level questioning can enhance the students' critical thinking skills and also increasing their writing abilities through the scaffolding learning process.
And one of the things that I do, or that we both do, is that we want to help students connect what they're learning to the real world. I've had students who've done English as an additional language courses, and many of them don't realise that they've actually got the skills to write an essay because that's what they were taught in their English as an additional language course, and explaining to them how that's a transferable skill even into their courses. Then there's another thing we also do is make sure students, like one of the questions I always ask students is, why is this assignment important? Why do you think the lecturer gave it to you? And for example, in nursing, it might be about values, the professional values that they need. And it sometimes takes them a while to get there, but they usually get to the idea that, well, these are the values we're going to have to use when we're out in the hospitals or in, private healthcare or whatever. And it also helps to motivate them if they can see a reason for what they're learning. So it's another reason why we connect with the real world. And the other connection that we make to the real world is that we say to students that they don't come in as a clean slate, they come in with knowledge. And so some of them have some of this knowledge already, and they just need to realise that they've got it so they can use it in their assignments and to help them understand what they've got to do.
Okay, so this is an example of success of a student that I met over the weekend. She was a nursing student with us, and I've worked with her over, a few semesters, helping her to look at her writing to help her to connect to the real world. So I was really happy to see, that this student actually really is like practicing her knowledge as a nurse in the Auckland hospital.
So, and the reflection part is really important, both for us as learning advisors to practice self-reflection and maybe even discuss it with colleagues if we're very proud of what our students have achieved, or if we're not so proud of how we've dealt with our students, and maybe get a bit of help and a bit of assistance about how to progress forward. The other thing that I think is also, or we think is also really important, is that we want to encourage students to reflect on their development and achievements. I had a student who came to me after she'd got her assignment back, and she goes, I only got an A- for my assignment, and was really disappointed. And she came in during one of the semester breaks, and I went, did you celebrate this? And she looked at me and went, no. And I said, in your first year, because she was second year, in your first year, did you celebrate getting an A-? And she said, yeah, we did. We went out and we had coffee, or we did, I can't remember the things that they did, but they actually got together as groups and celebrated their successes. And I said, well, what happened in your second year? A- is a pretty good mark. Yeah. So it's really important to encourage students to realise that even though they may not be getting the mark like she wanted, an A+, I actually told her, come back and I will show you what maybe you could do next time to get your A+. But it's really important for us to encourage students to reflect on the positives of their achievements.
So finally, to conclude, Ruth and I, we'd like to conclude based on our practice, like what we shared, to be always very mindful of each student individual's needs, to appreciate students' views, cultures, and challenges, maintain a student-centered approach and mindset, treating each student with sensitivity, reflect on our practice as a learning advisor, and also, last but not least, to be kind and approachable to our students. So hopefully, when we are aware of all this, we'll be helpful to students to, support them in a holistically way. Yeah. And that's all we wanted to share. These are the references. And thank you for listening. And we are happy to have questions or comments from you. I'm sure you all have done the same thing as we do. Yeah, we'd like to hear from you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cindy and Ruth. Very definitely holistic support and creating a safe space for your learners. We have got probably about 5 minutes for questions before the next session. So either put in the chat, or if anybody would like to ask Cindy and Ruth before we move on to the next session.
I'll ask Tanya from Open Polytechnic. Thank you for that. Thanks very much. Just wondering if you deal at all with students online, or if it's mostly face-to-face with you. We're in a quite different situation at Open Poly, and also that often they're asynchronous, so we don't always get the opportunity to be screen sharing or even phoning necessarily. So try and embed empathy, etc., within emails often. Any thoughts on that?
Yes, I think especially when you come online, it can be quite challenging. However, we try our best to share words, like to give encouraging words sometimes, and also to empathize on the situation when they are at, by before even we start the session, to give them the assurance that we understand, and also we know you're going through, and with having multiple jobs or multiple situations going on, especially during the lockdown time. Yeah, I think that helps a lot. We do see on our Zoom sessions where students have struggling with the kids around with them, climbing over them. So those are the times I think it's important for us to show that kind of empathy.
And on occasions I've rescheduled a Zoom session when the kids are in bed, when we've been on lockdown, just because it's so much easier for the parent who's trying to deal with their screaming child. I actually had that in one session. But it is harder to embed empathy in emails. But it's not totally impossible.
No,
It's kind of trying to find out a little bit about the student and where they're coming from and
for
what they're
sure.
worried about. Yeah.
Kia ora.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much. Now is if people want to change and move to another room, there is space. We'll have a 5-minute break before we welcome our next presenters, who are Mariam and Andrea from the University of Waikato, who are going to lead a workshop, and I think as well as sharing their ideas with us, I think they want ideas from the floor as well to help build a resource repository for supporting students. So lovely to see you all. And we'll just have a wee break and then start again at 11. Thank you, Cindy and Ruth.